In the last video, we looked at how to download a Mathematica notebook into a folder of our own choosing using a right click. In this particular video, I want to find the notebook that we downloaded, open it up, and start working on it. So just to recap what we did in the last video we downloaded this Lab Zero notebook into a folder in my home directory. So what I want to do now is I actually want to get into my file browser. Since I am working on a Macintosh, that's the Finder. So I open up a file browser, and now what I have to do is I have to find the directory. Now I've got a very complicated home folder, but what I do know is I downloaded it to a folder that I called My Math 164 notebooks. And there is the notebook sitting there in the folder because this folder was one that I just created specifically for these particular notebooks. Now, to open up the notebook on a computer that has Mathematica installed, all I have to do is double click the file. If Mathematica is not installed on your computer, it will not open up the notebook correctly. Now, when you open it up, you may or may not have this panel over here. This is from the last time I opened up Mathematica. I'm going to get rid of it. But the notebook itself should open up. Now, there are several things that I want to point out to make things easier for you. To understand what's going on. First of all, one thing that I want to notice is that there's up here in the upper right hand corner, there is something called 150%. Uh, that's the magnifying thing. It lets me change how big the font is. And I typically use either 125 to 150 because I've got middle-aged eyes and the standard default font is just way too small for me to make sense out of it. Now, the very first thing that I'm going to suggest that you do is go ahead and change the put your name here to your name. And then I would also suggest going to the File menu and saving the notebook. Always save your work fairly frequently. And if it's just a save as, and it's the menu item is the same on PCs as it is on Macintoshes, it'll always save it to the default place where the notebook was last saved. Now, I'm not going to read all of this stuff to you, but I am going to highlight one thing. In the notebooks that I write, when I have questions that require you to answer a question, the type is usually in red. And so I'm just going to quickly skim down to where I first of all have a question. And this is a really boring question, but it says activate the following input cell to create an output. Now, you'll notice that over here, there is this little bracket that I've highlighted with that green circle. These things are called the cells. And this particular cell, you'll notice, has a fixed with bold-faced font. And if you look very carefully on that cell bracket over here, there is a little tiny triangle at the top of it. Those are the things that says something is an input cell. Now, the other thing that I want you to notice is if when I'm moving my mouse, the cursor changes from a horizontal eye into a vertical eye. And if I put that cursor right by that 3 and click, I get a flashing I get a flashing cursor that is right by that 3, and that says that the cursor is inside that cell. And I can activate the cell once the cursor is inside the cell by doing a shift return or an enter on the numeric keypad. And when I do that, Mathematica responds with the output 5 because 2 plus 3 is equal to 5. So anytime I tell you to activate a Mathematica input cell, that's what I mean. So down here is another Mathematica input cell. When I put the cursor in that cell and activate it, I get an answer. You should get used to practicing how to activate these input cells before you come to the first Blackboard Collaborate meeting for the Math 164 class on Friday, September the 4th.